Before I tell you how my own sister tried to hollow out my life from the inside, let me paint you one picture. You're standing in the hallway of your childhood home, 61 years old, hands that have built 3 businesses from nothing, and your younger sister is seated at the dining table with her husband laughing. Not at a joke, at you. She has just slid a stack of papers across the table and told you with a smile she borrowed from your mother that your name is no longer on the property, that everything you contributed over 30 years has been legally redirected. She looks at her husband and says, "She never paid attention to the fine print." And then she looks back at you and says it, calm, certain, like a woman who has already won. "It's done, Diane. There is nothing left for you here." That sentence was supposed to be the end of my story. It became the beginning of theirs. Before the story gets darker, like this video, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments what city you are watching from. Because betrayal does not always come from strangers. Sometimes it sits at your kitchen table, calls you mom, calls you sis, and waits for you to stop paying attention. My name is Diane Calloway. I am 61 years old. I was born in a rented house in Knoxville, Tennessee, to parents who believed that work was the only honest prayer. I believed that too. At 19, I took a bookkeeping job at a small construction supply firm and stayed late every single night for 2 years, until the owner offered me a junior partnership. By 34, I had bought him out entirely. By 45, I had expanded into 2 counties, employed 47 people, and owned 3 properties outright, including the family home my parents had left behind when they passed. I worked through a divorce, through a health scare that took 8 months of my life, and through the kind of grief that makes Tuesday mornings feel like drowning. My hands have signed contracts in offices that smelled like old coffee and ambition, and I am proud of every single callus. I had one sister, Renee, 12 years younger, always charming, always certain that the world owed her a softer landing than the one I had accepted. I loved her the way you love someone you raised halfway yourself, completely, and at great personal cost. Renee Calloway Marsh was 49 when this began. She had her mother's smile and her father's patience for waiting. She married Derek Marsh 11 years ago, a man who sold insurance and spent his weekends talking about investments he never quite made. Together they were the kind of couple who always seemed one opportunity away from a different life. The first red flag arrived small, the way they always do. It was Renee asking, over coffee, whether I had ever thought about simplifying my estate. Not estate planning. Simplifying. Her word. She said the properties were a lot to manage alone. She said Derek had a contact who specialized in family asset consolidation, and it might give me peace of mind. I laughed and changed the subject. I told myself she was only being thoughtful. I was 60 years old and tired in ways I hadn't yet admitted out loud. I wanted to believe she was looking out for me. That instinct, the one that reaches for love when it should be reaching for a pen and paper, cost me more than I can calculate. The questions came in waves after that, each one dressed up as concern. Renee asked whether I had considered adding her to the deed on the family home, just in case something happened to me unexpectedly. She said it was what responsible families did. I said I would think about it. 2 months later, Derek appeared at my office with a folder. He explained that he and Renee had connected with an estate attorney named Gerald Foss, who had drawn up a simple document that would transfer limited power of attorney to Renee during any period of my incapacity. He used the word incapacity 4 times. I signed nothing. A week after that, my accountant called to mention that someone had requested my business tax filings from the past 5 years through a third-party legal query. I asked him who. He said the request came through Gerald Foss's office. I felt something cold move through my chest. I called Renee. She said it was routine. She said I was being paranoid because I had always been too independent for my own good. That word, paranoid, was the one she chose. I almost let her convince me. Instead, that night I pulled out every document I owned and spread them across my kitchen table like a map I was seeing for the first time. The discovery did not arrive with drama. It arrived as a single email notification at 6:17 on a Tuesday morning. My bank flagged an attempted change of address on one of my business accounts, submitted through a third-party authorization form. The form carried my signature. I had never signed it. I sat very still for what felt like several minutes. Then I opened my filing cabinet and pulled every document Renee and Derek had placed in front of me over the past 18 months. I examined each one slowly, the way you look at something familiar that has suddenly become a stranger. 3 of them had addendum pages I had not been shown at signing. One transferred secondary authority over my rental property LLC to a holding company registered in Derek's name. Another granted Renee co-trustee status on an account I had opened for my retirement. The forgery was careful, not perfect, but careful enough to survive a distracted glance. I did not cry. I did not call Renee. I sat at that table until the sun came fully through the window, and I understood, with perfect cold clarity, that my sister had not been worrying about my future. She had been engineering her access to it. I did not move fast. I moved right. That same morning I called an attorney I had used for business litigation 15 years prior, a woman named Carol Sims, who had the reputation of someone you did not want on the opposing side of anything. I brought her the documents and said nothing dramatic. I laid them on her desk and asked her what she saw. She saw it within 4 minutes. Over the next 2 weeks, working quietly and without announcement, Carol filed to invalidate the fraudulent addenda, froze the third-party authorization attempt with the bank, and transferred my business accounts to a new institution entirely. I contacted the county records office and confirmed no deed changes had been fully processed. I moved the retirement account into a structure Renee could not touch with a court order, let alone a forged signature. I changed my estate documents, removed her name from everything, and named a charitable trust as the primary beneficiary. I told no one in the family. I continued calling Renee every Sunday. I continued asking about her garden and Derek's sales numbers. I let her believe the window was still open. Renee and Derek called a family dinner on a Saturday in March. They had invited 2 cousins and an aunt, which I understood immediately. Witnesses, people who could confirm that Diane had been informed and had agreed. Derek sat at the head of the table with a leather portfolio in front of him. He opened it with the confidence of a man reading final results. He explained that given my age and the complexity of my holdings, Renee and he had taken steps to help me consolidate and protect my assets. He slid the papers toward me. He said everything had been arranged and Carol should expect transfer documents the following week. Renee reached across and touched my hand. She said, "We just want to take care of you." I looked at her hand on mine for a long moment. Then I looked up. I told her Carol had already received documents, just not the ones Derek was expecting. I opened my own folder. Carol had prepared a summary of findings. I placed it on the table slowly, 1 page at a time. The forged signatures, the unauthorized addenda, the fraudulent authorization attempt, the holding company in Derek's name, Derek's portfolio closed. Renee's hand left mine. I looked at her and said the only line that needed saying, "You had 30 years to ask me for help. You chose to take it instead." Carol filed the civil fraud complaint the following Monday. Because the forged signatures crossed into bank fraud territory, federal involvement followed within 6 weeks. Derek Marsh lost his insurance license pending investigation. The holding company he had registered was dissolved by court order. The estate attorney, Gerald Foss, faced a separate disciplinary review from the state bar for his role in preparing documents he knew contained fraudulent additions. At the hearing, the judge reviewed the evidence Carol presented and used language I will not forget. She said the pattern of conduct demonstrated a deliberate and coordinated effort to exploit a family relationship for financial gain, and that the law does not recognize affection as a defense for fraud. My aunt, who had sat at that dinner table watching Derek open his portfolio, submitted a written statement confirming what she had witnessed. She stood in the courthouse hallway afterward and told me she had suspected something was wrong for months and was ashamed she had not said so sooner. I told her the truth. Silence is not always betrayal. Sometimes it is just the weight of not knowing what you are allowed to say. I did not feel victorious when it was over. I felt the specific and quiet grief of being right about someone you had loved, without reservation for nearly 5 decades. There is no winning in that. There is only the truth, and the truth costs something no court can reimburse. The week after the hearing, I drove back to the family home in Knoxville and sat on the porch steps for a long time. A neighbor from 3 houses down walked her dog past the fence and waved the way people do in places where they still notice each other. The maple in the front yard had started budding early. My father had planted that tree the year I was born. I thought about all the Sundays I had called Renee, all the times I had chosen love over evidence. You do not stop loving someone because a judge says you were right. You just learn to hold the love and the loss at the same distance, without letting either one pretend to be the other. What I know now and what I carry every day is this. Loyalty is not the same as access. Love is not the same as permission. The people who genuinely care for you do not need a legal document to get close to what you have built. They are close because they stayed when there was nothing to take. If someone in your life is studying your assets more carefully than they are studying your heart, that is not family planning. That is something else entirely. Name it clearly, and protect yourself before kindness becomes the thing they use against you. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and leave your city in the comments. It means more than you know. I will see you in the next one.